Live from his home studio in Arkansas, please welcome the host of Security Sidebar, John Wagnon.
Well, hey, everybody. John here. It is that time. It is Security Sidebar live stream time. And let me tell you something, man. I am excited about the conversation that we're going to have today. And I would just encourage all of you to join in on the conversation with us. We're streaming live to YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter. And, you know, man, if you can stream to it, we're pretty much streaming to it, right? And so yeah, I look forward to interacting with everyone out there. Today, we're going to be talking about the dark web. It's like, I almost feel like I need to be like the dark web. You know, you can't say it, you know, fully out there in the public, right? So like, what is this thing? We've all heard about the dark web. There's all kinds of bad stuff that happens there. And, you know, there's all kinds of criminal activity and, you know, but how do you get to it? What is it? What happens there? All of those things. So we're gonna start a conversation today about what it is. We'll dig into a little bit of it. And but then my expectation or my hope is that we can continue this and maybe have yet a follow-on episode where we really dig deep into following some examples and stuff like that. So without any further ado, as they say, I want to bring on my guest today, Mr. John Cianferrani. He's a senior solutions engineer with F5 Shape, knows everything there is to know about bots and dark web and mitigation and all that stuff. So with that, let me bring him on. Mr. John, it's great to see you. First of all, you have an awesome name, and thanks for being here, man.
Thanks very much. Very excited to be here, and I agree with you. I think there's so much ground to cover, and I think it's a very exciting, landscape and topic to really dive into, because I think it's one that just a lot of people always keep hearing, but really just don't even know enough about.
Yeah. Absolutely. You know, I was talking to some buddies of mine the other day and, you know, we're like, hey, there's all this, you know, there's this big hack, there's this credential leak, there's, you know, whatever. I mean, I feel like every company in the world has had some kind of like, hey, there's a big leak, the data leak, whatever. And it's like, okay, I know my stuff's out there. My data has been leaked, right? But the question is, what do people do with that thing? Like, where does that go? And why is that necessarily a bad thing, right? So anyway, so that's part of this whole dark web thing. But to start things off, though, I wanted to just kind of give a good definition of the dark web. What in the world are we even talking about? And so you gave me this slide that's got a good definition. So I was going to pop that up real quick and maybe just have you talk through like, what is the dark web? Is that cool?
Sure. So, I mean, where I typically have started here is really that Wikipedia definition. And you know, it's a starting point. So, you know, if we read verbatim, and maybe I won't read everything, but it's really the dark web is the www content that exists on darknets overlay networks. So, you know, when we start peeling apart that bit of the onion, well, what are they talking about when they talk about darknets and overlay networks? Well, essentially, we've got things like Tor, which is sort of like more of a security VPN where, you know, people try to hide themselves. You know, if we jump ahead here, you know, the dark web forms a small part of the deep web, the part of the web not indexed by web search engines. You know, so when we start talking about this deep web, you know, again, terms that a lot of people haven't seen, you know, when you're searching stuff on Google, well, that's all public, but there's many pieces, you know, obviously for good reason, like your banking and medical records and other stuff that really just, you'd obviously don't want showing up on Google. But all of these things, you know, as they're deeper down there, they require a little bit more effort to find, you know, sort of that idea that, you know, you've got the main street, you know, that's kind of the public web. And then you go down that back alley and you find the guy who's, you know, got a steel door and a little hole, and you got to give him the password. And now you're into that secret club. You know, that's kind of the traditional view of what the dark web was. But maybe to expand it a little bit broader, because I think now whenever I read articles or people that talk about it, they use it more in this sort of broad generic fashion, that it's sort of like any place where bad things can be found. So it's not necessarily that view that it has to be hidden, tucked away, and you need to know the password. It's really that there's more of the stuff that's starting to come right into the public light. So, you know, we can see this on, you know, public or semi-public forums, you know, things like Reddit. E-commerce platforms have been plagued by, by this, where people are just trying to sell their goods in the light of day. And a lot of these sort of, then there's obviously these traditional dark markets where, they specialize in this, and some of them have, kind of a leg in both camps where they exist, yes, in the dark web, where they might have a presence on things like Tor, but at the same time, they've got a public side, as well, because, it's good for business.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, and I tell you, no, so that's a good, I appreciate you kind of going over that, so there's this kind of mystique around what is the dark web. So I appreciate you kind of clarifying a bit about, what it even is, right? And how some people now it's like, hey, I'm doing a bunch of, criminal kind of stuff just right there in plain sight. And then they'll maybe move around or whatever. So I get, like you said, when we talk about the dark web, it's this broad, generic, thing that, this term that people apply to any place you can go do bad stuff, right?
Essentially.
I was going to show the next. There's a great picture. This graphic. I was going to show that that kind of gives a good representation of maybe what we're talking about here. So any thoughts on this little diagram?
Sure. I think, I think everyone sort of assumes that the internet everything's accessible in a certain way, just maybe given that many times everything is. But right. I think, the stuff that we mostly interact with, or a huge portion of it, is really that surface web. It's this sort of this iceberg model where you see a lot of this stuff at the top. You Google for everything. There's all this public information, and many of it's spilled out. It's not protected anyway. But then there's sort of this piece of kind of the deep web as you go further, as I sort of alluded to, you've got, cloud storage and corporate documents and all these types of things where maybe there's bits and pieces that leak out every now and then, but generally the large part of it's all sort of hidden away. It's not indexed. You can't see it. And then there's, sort of this even deeper part, this dark web part, where you've now got to do extra things, where there's private communication hurdles, like programs like, Tor, that are there to kind of abstract and allow both, the client and the server side to sort of talk to each other without entities watching of the who's who.
Okay. Yeah. So it takes a lot more effort. It's kind of like you said, that analogy. If you're walking down, the back alley in this big city, and then the guy's got the steel door with the little, window, whatever slide. It takes a lot of effort to get into that room, right? Maybe some coordination and whatever. So yeah.
But now you've got the guy who's got the trench coat, who comes up to you privately and says, "Hey, you want to buy a watch?"
That's right.
It's that sort of scenario where that person, if they were selling watches in the back room, it's really hard to get that, that foot traffic and everything else, but it's very secure, sort of like the dark web, a lot harder. Yeah. But now, they want to make money. So they recognize that, there's an avenue to have people walking down the street trying to sell a couple watches. And if they got to run from the cops now and then, well, that's a business risk that they just take into account.
That's right. Yeah, that's part of the business decision, right? So it's like, hey, that's part of the price of doing business. So we've kind of talked around this a little bit, but there's the idea of why would someone desire to go to the dark web, right? And so obviously there's criminal activity that happens there. There's a lot of bad things. But there's also some other interesting, maybe not quite so criminal. So maybe give us a couple of examples, if you could, about some of the not so criminal things that are still out there on the dark. Like why would someone go there? You know what I mean?
So it's funny. Like I believe that the CIA keeps a presence there, and I think there's reasons where I heard rumors that there at one point there was like an anonymous chess club where at any hour of the day you could go there to find a chess game with anonymous people. Right. But Facebook and a lot of search engines, they did keep a general presence there, because I think there are some people who are extreme security minded, and they just they prefer to try and be less watched, if you will. So if you abstract the bad things that happen from the platform itself, the underlying infrastructure like Tor that's built, it's used for people, in countries where maybe the governments try to keep a closer eye on what citizens do. There's those types of reasons why someone might want to go there and not necessarily engage in bad behavior. But like anything, you create bad things, you create things like this. Well, bad guys will find a way to use it for their advantage as well.
Yeah.
So,
of course.
that's where the bad stuff comes in, is where we've got scenarios where these guys trying to make it a buck and turn it into a whole business.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly right. I mean, I think we were talking before this. I think it's people that are trying to either make a buck or, get ahead or whatever. And some people do it the legal way. Some people don't do it the legal way for a variety of reasons or whatever. So anyway, hey, I was going to bring up another slide that you shared about just an example from a screenshot of a dark web site. And these are different accounts that are for sale. So let me pop this one up really quick. So it looks like this one is lifetime streaming video. This seller out there is like, hey, I've got, you can get streaming accounts for lifetime video or whatever. And he's trying to sell that. But I can only assume he has gotten these credentials for these streaming accounts, via some kind of a leak or a hack or something. Is that kind of what's going on here?
So typically what happens here is more of a function of credential stuffing. And for those not familiar with the term, it's really the idea that over all this time, as we sort of started out, companies have been broken into, databases have been leaked, and there's billions of credentials out there, and that alone is not the sole part of the problem. The other part is really us, is that we have this propensity to want to keep one or two passwords, and we use the same email address forever, and we have that same one or two passwords, and we do it for everything. And you know what? I'm to fault as well. Before I joined, Shape and F5, I was one of those people who really only had a handful of passwords because I'm, lazy. I don't want to remember a million different ones. Yeah. But when I started, seeing all the stuff that was out there, honestly, it kind of scared the crap out of me that, I was like, oh, I've really got to change this behavior. Like this really is bad, because the behavior that these guys will do is they'll take that password that they found somewhere. Your local library got broken into and they got your username and password, and they'll try it on every bank. They'll try it on every streaming service. They'll try it on every retailer, anywhere you could think that that someone might have an account created. They're going to attempt it, and they're going to have a degree of success. And then they take these accounts, and then whether they can monetize them. So on the left side there, I've purposely kind of cut out a lot of the business names. I don't want to name and shame anybody generally. Right. But what we can see is that there's accounts that have points balances. So what they'll do is if these accounts have those, usually there's a redemption method. So they convert those back into gift cards, and gift cards are just almost as good as cash to be able to sell somewhere else on the internet, or that, they're able to redeem those cards for another service or some way, essentially extract value out of those cards. So they drain it. Or the other thing, it's a service like we have on the right side there, like a video streaming scenario. Then they'll sell them, that they recognize that, $15 a month is maybe too much for some people, and they'd rather pay $6 to have, lifetime-ish access. Usually these guys have, quite honestly, so much stock that they can offer lifetime video streaming that for them, $6, they might have hundreds of Netflix or Disney Plus or HBO or any of these types of accounts in stock. So for them to say, hey, for $6, whatever, if I have to replace you an account one or two times, and quite honestly, worst case, if I walk away and don't replace it, you ain't going to find me anyways. So, it's the best business model for them that they get to sell these things.
Yeah, they're hard to find. And you're right. If they need to keep their customer happy, if they really care about that, then you're right. They've got a whole, treasure trove of credentials to get into Disney Plus or to, HBO Max, or, you name it, right?
Exactly.
Netflix. No, that's pretty cool. And it's interesting too, like a lot of these points, like the little screenshot on the left there, a lot of these points, I in my mind, I go to places like a fast food restaurant or something like that. And it's like, I really want my burrito. And if I can get X points, then I get a free burrito on Mondays or whatever. Right. So do they go after that kind of stuff?
Absolutely, because I would say points type programs are one of the most attacked that we've seen from, Shape business perspective, is because, for a couple of reasons, or at least on the dark web, being sold. If you think of an attacker who's doing credential stuffing, they break into a bank account, maybe they have ways to monetize to get more value out of that bank account. So it's not something to necessarily turn around and sell, because they probably have better ways to use that or extract more value. So they're triaging, versus, let's say got into, your favorite burrito place, and, they managed to get, and they're getting, thousands of accounts every day. Well, there's only so many burritos they can eat. Or maybe they're even in a country where, that business doesn't even exist. So, they pop those accounts up for a couple bucks a piece. A bunch of starving college students say, hey, this is for me. I can have burritos every day, and it's only going to cost me, $50 for the month versus, maybe that would be several $100s. So there's a value trade for them, and it works.
Yeah. So, and that's true. Cause in my mind, I was thinking, okay, if I'm the one buying now, if I'm the starving college student that wants a burrito or whatever, we're picking on burritos, but that's a good one. Burritos are delicious. Anyway, then it's like, okay, I still have to pay something because I have to pay like Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever to the seller that's out there that's gotten all these credentials. But it's going to be a whole lot cheaper, and he can keep feeding me, account points and whatever, and then I can feed myself, right? Or the same, or maybe the same is true with like airline miles. I'm thinking, a little more than just a burrito now. So, you can just imagine where it's like, hey, if I can get a free round trip to, the beach and sunny wherever, and then that's all right. I'll pay X number of Bitcoin for that, right?
We've seen it for, train tickets, bus tickets, airline points for sure. All of those different types of things all have value. And especially, if you think of, hey, you're trying to go, cross state, cross country, train tickets could be $600, $700, $800. If somebody's got sitting on a whole whack load of points, and, these days, everyone's wearing masks, hard to identify people. Nobody's really checking a lot of things. Again, it's so easy for people to get away with, both sides of it, both getting the accounts and the redemption of these accounts. Sometimes it's even, we've seen it also as well. If this is a retail store, I'm using my points now, and I'm going to get a lawnmower, I'm going to get an Xbox, whatever that scenario is. I'm doing, store pickup, parking lot pickup kind of scenarios. Yep. Nobody's checking me. I walk away, and it's not until a few weeks later that, or maybe even months later, till the actual account holder realizes that, hey, where did my points go? By that time, it's too late to do anything. And the company, the cops don't care. The cops usually are in the, for some of the customers we've talked to, they say, hey, you created this points program, you police it. Like, we ain't policing your points program for you. Unless it gets to really some sort of awkward point where they feel they need to.
Right.
So ultimately, they just give the customer back their points, and, rinse and repeat.
Yeah, that's exactly right. At that point, it's on the company that created the points, program, blah, blah, blah. And so, and I guess maybe if you're a law abiding citizen and you're thinking, oh man, this is crazy. Cause now I guess my mind goes to, all right, you got company X that created the points program, and then now credentials have been stolen. Then they just effectively gave away a bunch of riding lawnmowers or whatever. I'm just picking on something, right? But then now possibly they're going to have to raise the prices on all their stuff because they got to account for all of the, lost inventory and blah, blah, blah. So now I'm paying for it anyway. So crazy.
And to take it maybe a step further, in some cases, they're after the PII data that's within these things. So we've seen a lot of like these credit profile companies and stuff that a lot of those get leaked as well. So then, someone gets your PII, and now they start creating accounts in other places. Maybe they create bank accounts under your name. Maybe they open credit cards under your name. There's an endless, next scam that can be perpetrated by these individuals for them to keep it going.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, the sky's the limit. The possibilities are endless, like you said. So, hey, really quick, I wanted to take just a second and give a couple of shouts out to some people that have commented here. I know we always encourage people to talk to us. So I just wanted to say hey to Mr. Kumar out there in India. He said, big fan from India. Hey, so it's great to see you. Gaurav, man, awesome to see you. And then also there was a question over here from Yulian Lesev. I'm sorry if I kind of butchered the name a little bit. But he's talking about, hey, if there's a trade with company information, how do you distinguish a leak from a weakness or vulnerability that may be like an insider, that kind of thing? And I guess at the heart of it, maybe one thing that I would say is is that, regardless of whether it was a leak from an insider or a hack or whatever, if it lands on the dark web, in this case, the dark web, people are still, selling stuff. But anyway, so that's one thought. I didn't know if you maybe had a thought on it.
Sure. Because I actually get asked this quite a bit, is like, if I show companies, it'd be like, hey, we've seen 100,000 of your accounts on the dark web. And they go, well, is that a leak? And be like, well, you know what, when I actually look at the timeline, because in some cases I'm able to track how these come out. A lot of times leaks are, hey, we got a million accounts. We're going to dump 1 million accounts all at once and sell them as a bundle, or threaten the company to release them, some form of like this, versus credential stuffing and this type of stuff. It's that slow bleed. Every day we see 100, 200, 500, whatever it is. And then you kind of, when you look at some of these dark websites, some of them will give different, I call it proof of life. They might give the person's, full name. They might give addresses. They might give part of the credit card numbers. And a lot of times you're looking at like when credit card number expires. So you can kind of tell that, like, if there was kind of this cutoff, all the credit cards generally expire on this date. But as you track it for a year, you constantly see those credit card numbers expiring. And then there's also the piece where, we work with companies themselves saying like, hey, these are the accounts. They can go back and sort of see like, oh yeah, we can see a login that came from this, we're a US based business. We see a login that came from Thailand or China or Russia or somewhere else, that doesn't look legit. Yeah, they sort of put the pieces together of what that looks like. So it's important to be able to identify sort of like that noise at your front door that's happening.
Right.
When traffic is coming in, you don't necessarily know if they're a good or a bad person right away. These are, not trying to plug anything, but these are kind of things that Shape really helps companies identify, like, who are the bad people before they've even typed in a username and credential into your login box. We can already identify that they're bad.
Super cool. Yeah. And then you don't let them do all that crazy stuff. Right?
Exactly. Then you sort of, kick them out before they even get a chance.
Yeah. Be like, you're not welcome here, whatever. So, hey, I had to pop this one up there too. This little comment, Boo Lamb, our buddy on the DevCentral team. We were talking about lawnmowers and burritos. You can picture me. He says John. And in this case, I don't know which John he's talking about, John. So anyway, regardless, riding a lawnmower, eating a burrito, that sounds like a fantastic Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, right? So good stuff. Awesome, man. Well, hey, so John, I wanted to pop up one more quick little screenshot that you sent to me. This one is from a Disney Plus account, and I guess it's a guy. I mean, you can tell me more about it, but it's a guy that bought some leaked credentials from Disney Plus because he wanted to watch his Mandalorian or Avengers movies or whatever, right? But then the actual owner of the Disney Plus account changes his password, and so then this guy that bought the leaked credentials was like, hey, I can't get in anymore. So he reaches out and he's like, hey, share the new password, help a fella out, right?
Help a brother out here. Yeah, exactly. It was what I saw a while back and I just couldn't help but laughing but it just really just shows you how mainstream almost some of this stuff has become, is that like, the guys talked about how he bought his account on AliExpress. I mean, AliExpress, common site for buying a lot of things, but again, nothing stopping guys from popping up things like accounts just the same. And, in this case, whatever, who knows what he paid, probably only a couple bucks, started using the account. Maybe he created a new profile, maybe, whatever. Sean eventually, got wise, checked one of these sites and realized that his credentials had been compromised and made a change. Right. And then locking out the poor other guy here. So he's left with no other recourse but to try and, email him out and say, well, can you help a brother out and share your password, so I can keep getting my Mandalorian fix on.
That's awesome. Yeah. Oh, I love that. And one little clue, if you're the actual account owner and you log in, you click on your smart TV and you select Disney Plus, whatever, and then it asks you what profile is watching right now. And you're like, wait a minute, who's that guy, right? Then your credentials have probably been hacked. But if you're the one buying the stuff, don't create another profile. Just watch it under one that's already been created, right? You don't want to give yourself away a little bit. But yeah, exactly. Crazy stuff. So yeah, that was a funny story. It's like, some people are desperate and they're just like, hey, share your credentials with me because I bought them illegally, right? So awesome, man. Well, hey, we've got about 5 minutes or so. I know we had talked about, hey, bringing up an actual dark web, or whatever you want to call it, right, site, and kind of looking at that. So if that's cool with you, I know you've got one up here. We could kind of talk through that for just a couple of quick minutes. Is that cool?
Sure.
Awesome, man. So let me pop this up, and then you can kind of talk us through a couple of these.
Sure. I'm going to start with this one site. I mean, it's pretty popular. Have I been pwned? So, I recommend everybody pop in your email address, and it'll tell you if your data has been a part of any kind of security breaches. And, surprise, surprise, I'm almost betting that it has. I've taken just a generic johnsmith@gmail.com. But this guy here, you can see breaches you were pwned in, and this web host, this separate breach, 500 pixels. The list goes on and 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 on. So if you didn't think your account or your credentials have ever been breached, and that same username and password is still secure to keep your bank and your email and everything else safe, well, I recommend maybe you look into a password managers and start using some unique passwords, because all of these things are out there. I'm even trying to get to the bottom, and it's taking me forever.
Right.
Because a lot of times what will end up happening is that these credentials will actually even be pasted on different sites so that people can use them. So, but I know we want to show everybody a dark website. So this one here, I would say is not quite the dark website. This is more that public watch seller guy with the trench coat. So these guys, Shellix.xyz, I always recommend caution wherever you go.
Yeah. Love that domain name, XYZ. Yeah.
They're really trying to be almost like the Amazon of this type of, industry, I guess, is that what they do is they don't really sell the accounts themselves per se. There's all of these different businesses, like Shopee and these small little stores, and they aggregate a bunch of these sellers together. So you can go through and you got YouTube Premium, Surfshark. We can scroll down and down. You want to get new identity template packs, and they'll give you templates to be able to upload. So this could be part of a secondary step of a scam. You've got someone's PII, but you want to create a driver's license or a password to upload to a bank or some other institute. HBO Max, OnlyFans, Windows 11, and the list goes on and on. They actually even provide you a nice Google Sheets of, all of the different businesses that are a part of their infrastructure today. And you can go to their individual links. We brought up one earlier here. So you can see Disney Plus, we've got, ESPN, and all of these different ones, again, pages and pages. And this is just one seller on here who's selling all of these different types of accounts. And it's, you can sort of understand why it works, that everyone's looking to sort of trim their budget and, keep costs under control. So for some people, the answer is, well, you know what, I'm not going to buy, NFL Sunday ticket from someone else. I'm going to buy it from here for $10, and save myself a bunch of money. So, these types of sites can definitely be very profitable.
No doubt about it. So, I mean, it's like these people, well, this one specifically, the Shellix, like you said, it's kind of the Amazon, it's the marketplace that would then send you to the people that would then sell you the credentials or sell you the access or whatever. But nonetheless, I'm sure they're all connected. Maybe Shellix is getting some kind of discount or some kind of,
They probably kick back at the end of the day. But I think the one thing to realize, a lot of people's mindset is, hey, it's that kid in mom's basement that's doing all this stuff. Yeah. No, these are billion-dollar funded organizations they're making a buck just on the other side of the line. They have the resources, they have the smarts, they have the right people, they have the technology to be able to pull all these things off in essentially a very well executed manner. Yeah.
I mean, they're organized, they're, well thought, they're capable, and, billions of dollars, like you said. So, no, that's awesome. Well, I tell you what, I'm gonna just come back to us for just this last couple of seconds here, but it's good it's interesting to see, like, hey, that's, there's one example of a site, maybe not quite so dark. I'm thinking about that iceberg you showed before. So we're not quite to the tip, top of the bottom. But at least there's a site that is selling stuff or sending you to a place that will sell stuff that is using leaked or stolen credentials to get you into all those different places that we just saw. So, I mean, that's one of 1,000 different ways that this whole dark web enterprise, can work. And I mean, man, there's so many different things that happen there, but But that's awesome. Well, so I know I talked about before that I'd love to continue this conversation. And now that we've kind of talked about, hey, what is the dark web? Why would someone go there? How do you get there? Whatever. Then I'd love to continue this maybe in another, security sidebar live stream where we really kind of dig into some different criminal activity that happens or some examples of, hey, this is how a lot of this takes place. So anyway, but John, it's been a pleasure, my friend. I really appreciate you being here today.
Thanks. And I agree with you. I think there's a lot of cool things, like you said, we can go into deeper sites that have more interesting information. We can even talk through some of the tools if, some of the people are interested and, have everybody earn their own little anonymous mask,
yes.
So they can be their own little, dark web experts on their own.
Dark web expert, man. Yeah. Certified. You update your LinkedIn profile, and wear your anonymous mask. I love that. I love that. That's the prize. Well, good to go, man. Well, John, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it. I know, man, our time went by so fast today. It's such an interesting topic, but I look forward to maybe having another chat with you on the next live stream.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Good to go,
Thanks
man.
as well for having me.
Thanks so much, man.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, what a fascinating conversation. For me, I just love that stuff. It's so awesome. So I really appreciate John, his expertise, his willingness to come on and talk through that. I wanted to highlight a couple of upcoming shows that we have. As we all know, October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which is part of why we're talking about dark web and all that stuff here today on Security Sidebar. But then some upcoming shows. We have on the 14th, DevCentral Connects, Be a Secure Code Warrior. So that's just here in a couple of days, Thursday at 12:30 Pacific. So that'll be Jason and Boo talking about how do you securely code. And then Jason will be here with his the core show talking about packet capture the flag. So digging into some Wireshark and packet captures and all that. So it'll be really cool. So make sure you join that one. And then following that, getting started in InfoSec, the DevCentral Connect show coming up on the 21st. So there's a lot of exciting things coming up. And with that, I will just say thanks for joining us today on Security Sidebar live stream. And it's been a pleasure, been a lot of fun to connect with all of you. And we've got a little promo to take us out. So after the promo, we'll see you guys on our next show. Thanks a lot.
This week on DevCentral Connects, shooting at the walls of data, click, click, secure code warrior. We are all the warriors. Everyone agrees that we need secure code, but how do you put that ideal into practice? Join Boo and Jason Thursday, October 14th, 12:30 Pacific, as they welcome Stephen Allor from Secure Code Warrior, a learning platform for improving developer security skills. The link in the description sets your reminder. DevCentral Connects is live every Thursday, 12:30 Pacific. And app to app, you'll win if you survive. Secure Code Warrior.